For these lectures on this section, you probably become really overwhelmed with what you're reading in chapter 35. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus just kind of in these lectures on the Chinese and the Korean Civil Wars to kind of put them into context, to maybe a little bit ground you in some of the other aspects of like the Vietnamese war and Cambodia with Pol Pot and all of that. So I'm going to go ahead and start this here. And this is a propaganda picture depicting Americans as very brutal in a North Korean mural. And so, political captions convey a certain image that may be real or not real, but this is certainly not the image that an American would ever draw of a soldier going into war, right? And so let's just kind of explore what's going on here. So we're going to talk about Korea, because Korea is not talked about as much as it should be, and Japanese colonization. So it's annexed by Japan in 1910. So Japan takes on this colonial mentality. Remember, we've talked about that. We've explored this already. In 1912, the Seoul's population is about 200,077, basically a little under 300,000. Most were Korean, but a good portion, almost 40,000, were Japanese, and then only some Chinese and Americans. Pyongyang, which is now the capital of North Korea, its population was only about 40,000, and in Busan about the same. Okay, think of like Santa Cruz, California. I think it's about 50, 60,000. So just give you kind of an idea. World War II. Excuse me. Many Korean forces, forced laborers in Korea and Manchuria by the Japanese, and they died. There was an estimated 270,000 to as much as over 800,000. And so then again, I kind of want to point out this is that Japan's relationship with Korea became very controversial at this time, right? And in 1941, many Koreans formed armies in support of the Allies and Communists living within China. You will have seen some of that in that discussion by Bruce Cummings in one of the videos that I have posted. But essentially, tens of thousands of Koreans joined Allies and Communist forces, in particular to fight off the Japanese. 1945, the horrific atomic bomb dropping of Hiroshima and Nagasaki happens. And then a Russian invasion force goes over into Korea. And all this time period is going to help really explain a lot of what's going on with North Korea now, okay? And everything. So, anyways. So, Korea from Japanese colonization to Russian and U.S. occupation. American forces arrived in southern Korea September 8, 1945. Here, okay? The Soviet Army and Korean Communists were stationed in the north. And the U.S. military command suggested to Soviets administrative divide along the 38th parallel. So the United States essentially split up, hypothetically, control here, giving the Russians control of the north and us control of the south. Keep in mind that Korea was under Japanese occupation, which is why the Russians and now the United States after World War II are going to justify like being there, is to kind of replace the Japanese occupation force. Hope you're following that. Now, here's what happens. Chinese communists and nationalists, the Gumidong is also called, united to fight Japanese invasion. So in other words, it's kind of like right now, let's say that some aliens came in from outer space to invade the United States. And, gangbangers, Ku Klux Klan, neo-Nazis, Black Panthers, the U.S. Army, everybody gets together to fight off because they want to keep America around. Sometimes when you have like an enemy come into a territory as a foreign invader, you can get unlikely allies out of it. So the communists and the nationalists were fighting amongst themselves, and they stopped doing that once the Japanese invaded China, and they temporarily fought together against the Japanese. Once that was accomplished, in 1946, Civil War broke out. Between 75,000 and 100,000 Korean communists volunteered and filtered back into North Korea from 1948 to 1950. So and that was again talked about in Bruce Cummings. If you look, these borders between China and Korea were actually very porous, not well guarded. And when the Japanese were invaded, many Koreans left to go fight with the Chinese. And so you had a lot of Korean boots on the ground, volunteer fighters. We saw the Spanish Civil War and Americans and people leaving to fight for that cause. But Koreans, many really felt committed to that. The communists in China won in 1949. And at that point, the nationalists set up in Taiwan and created the Republic of China. And so with lightning speed, I know I've just covered a lot of ground. Just know this: Japan occupied Korea, cut through attacking China, and of course Japan got nuclear bombs dropped on it. The Chinese communists and nationalists were able to kick back the Japanese. The communists then had a civil war in which they won. Many Koreans were supporting the communists. End of war. Russia is over here. The United States is here. And everybody's like, what are we going to do with Korea now? I hope you can see all the complications going on there. I'm going to end it right there. And we'll go to the next.